Greetings companies, greetings exporters, greetings everybody to our webinar today. We are delighted to have you all join us to talk about the new online normal for doing business in South America. And just while the last of you are logging on and register and clicking on to the webinar, let's do a quick round of introductions to us all. My name is Susanna Hardy, and I'm Chief Content Officer at IBT Online. I'm really delighted to be here with you all today. As Chief Content Officer, I'm really involved and interested in everything that has to do with content, from search engine optimization to content from webinars and content for websites. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Samantha Sofici, Business Development Manager at IBT Online, and Samantha is an absolute digital native and is always in cheerfully answering questions from clients around the world about the online environment. And by the way, she's also originally from Argentina, so that's great. We are really pleased and delighted to be joined by Veronica Medina. Veronica, I'm sure known to many of you who have been active in South America. Veronica is the CEO and founder, in fact, of Business Hub. And Business Hub is really I guess a consulting firm that Veronica started in 2014 after having a lot of experience with assisting companies everywhere to do business, expand their business in South and South America. Let's have a quick word also just about the companies. First, about IBT Online. IBT stands for International Business and Technologies, and we are online, and we are a U.S. company, a private company. We've been going since 2002, and I guess our core unique selling point, if you like, is that we really think and act online and globally, and have done so since our foundation in 2002 for that. And let me tell you also a little bit about Veronica's company called Business Hub. Here's the address and email links to Veronica directly, but you'll get that at the end of the webinar as well. So it's really, Business Hub is really also quite a new player in this whole business consulting area, although they've been there since 2014. They really focused on the southern part of South America, Argentina, Chile, Colombia, also Ecuador, Peru, and they'll have some links into Mexico as well. They provide assistance to investors, including funding sources for their projects, but really their core of the business is to help foreign companies, particularly American companies, foreign companies from North America, Europe, Asia, expand and grow into South America. It's an important area, a vital area for trade, and it's really important to have that local in-market partner. So they have a long list of strong expertise. At the bottom of the slide, you see that from agriculture to mining, environmental technologies to energy, all kinds of things. Business Hub also have a very specific relationship with several either states or regions, particularly things like Michigan, Georgia, Ohio, or the Invest Hong Kong, so on. So they have these strong links there where they're dedicated to help the companies from these regions in South America in their markets. So let's move on now. I think most of you have now logged on. It's great that you're all here. We're excited to start this webinar. And here we go. And there's Veronica. She's going to start. First, let me just give you the today's agenda. We're going to talk first about Veronica talking about South America being open for business and the opportunities we have in these times. And then we'll talk a bit more about the online environment and how we see online business development tools for South America. And we end with a helping hand, some takeaways, and some time for Q&A. Please do drop your questions in the chat box or the question box. We're curating questions, and we will have time at the end for those questions. So with that, I'm going to turn to Veronica. Veronica, tell us a bit about South America open for business in these times.
So good morning, everyone. Well, good morning from Chile. First of all, I want to start off by thanking IBT really for giving us such a great opportunity to talk about a subject that is very dear to us and that I think is very important during the time that we are living. Next slide, please. So the way my presentation is divided, it's really into 3 parts. The first 8 slides or so, I'm going to talk specifically about the measures for reopening the economies here, relating to Argentina, Chile, Colombia, and Peru. As Susana mentioned, we also work in other countries in the region, such as Ecuador, Paraguay, but we will focus on these 4 because the number of projects that we have currently ongoing that we are working with are mainly in these 4 countries. I also just want to clarify, we do not work with Brazil, so that's why we are not covering Brazil here. The second part of the presentation, I'm going to discuss the specific opportunities that we are seeing during this pandemic that we are living. So the past 3 months, I will give you examples of the opportunities that we are really working on. And then the final part of the presentation will be relating to recommending to you how to actually work in our markets. So we start off with Argentina. The government has extended the lockdown in COVID affected areas like Buenos Aires until the end of June. In the other areas of the country where there is no virus or it's low in terms of number of cases, restrictions have been relaxed. Factories and construction sites remain closed, but there are certain industries that have been able to open, such as the automotive industry, obviously under strict sanitary regulations. Mining is one of the activities that has actually been exempted from the quarantine, but the difficulty there has been since transport has actually been restricted within the country. There's been a decrease in terms of the employees that are able to get to the mining operations, and therefore a decrease in the production. With regards to the ports and airports, so you see how those are functioning. Container ships with essential cargo are able to operate in the ports. Other ships that have non-essential cargo, they have to quarantine for 14 days. And there's actually been some incentives put into play, for example, reduction in fees paid by licensees. In the area of airports, they're looking to open national flights at the end of July, the 3rd week of July, to areas that are unaffected by COVID. And then September the 1st is when they are predicting to open the rest of the national routes and also international flights. So with regards to Chile, Chile has implemented selective lockdowns based on the number of cases. And right now, the metropolitan region is in quarantine until this Friday, but we will probably hear in the next hours or so if that is going to be extended. With regards to our main industries here, mining, agriculture, they've been relatively unaffected. They are working under strict contingency plans. But what has played in their favor is the fact that the operations, whether it's the agriculture or mining, are outside of the central zone that has been mostly affected by the virus. So they've been able to function with reduced personnel. One area that has been hit hard, though, both in Chile and Argentina, has been lithium operations. The operations have actually been halted. investments have been canceled, and this is due to several reasons: the decrease in the price of the mineral, the decreased purchase by China of this mineral, and also the pandemic. And with regards to how the ports and the airports are functioning here in Chile, we see that the ports are functioning just with a series of sanitary measures that have been put into place. The airport in Santiago has actually remained open during this whole time. We do see some international flights coming from certain locations such as Miami. Sky Airlines started last week with some of their national routes, and LatAm is planning to start national and international flights between this month and next month. So for Colombia, I think is next. For Colombia, the quarantine has been extended through to the 1st of July. The reactivation plans have actually begun since April. Some of the sectors that have been able to reopen, we see our textile, the wood industry, chemicals, electric machinery, laboratories, construction, and mining has continued actually to be open during the past 3 months. And with regards to the functioning of their ports and airports, we see that they are operating normally, the ports, just obviously a reduction in manpower. And airports, their flights, their domestic flights are predicted to restart in July and international in September. So the last country we will discuss is actually Peru. Peru is probably the country that has had the strictest sanitary measures enforced during this pandemic. They've actually had a national lockdown and quarantine since mid-March, and that's been extended through to the end of June. They are, however, implementing a 4-stage plan for reopening of their economy. And by the end of the 4th stage, they expect that over 95% of their economy will be operating. So we can see here the different phases. Back in May, some of the industries that were able to start was, for example, open pit mining. They had a certain number of transport and sanitation projects that reopened. Agriculture and e-commerce was able to start back up again. Phase 2, which is currently happening now, you see the starting of underground mining and exploration being able to start. An additional large number of transport and sanitation projects. Next slide, please. And then we see for phase 3 and phase 4, which will occur during July and August, we see additional mining operations being able to open, additional infrastructure projects also to continue their operations, and industries such as tobacco also coming in line. With regards to the situation at their ports and airports, we see that ports have been functioning throughout this time. Really, trade was actually never restricted in Peru. They just have safety protocols that have been put into place. The one thing that has actually been affected is airports. They have been closed since March, and national flights are expected to resume in July, and we don't know as of yet when they will open their borders to international flights. Next slide, please. So I really like this graph. I know we are not the only region in the world that is obviously going through this. Everywhere in the world has been affected by COVID, by coronavirus. And for 2020, we are also not the exception to the rule that our GDP, that we are not going to grow, that we are going to see negative growth numbers. But what I really see as hopeful And as very positive is we see that by next year, the region and these 4 countries are going to see positive growth, strong positive growth. As you can see here, Peru is predicted to grow, is projected to grow to over 6%, and then kind of a leveling off by 2022, but still in those positive growth rates. There are 2 things that I want to mention here just in this slide. One is the response of local governments to the pandemic. And I do have to say that in all of these 4 countries, the governments have actually reacted very proactively and very strong with regards to the containment of the virus, which has been very positive. The other side is obviously the effect or the toll on our economies because of these sanitary restrictions. All of the governments have come up with very robust fiscal policies, fiscal plans in order to help the economy, reactivate the economy, and they vary in all different sectors. For example, in terms of assisting employment and in keeping employment jobs, in terms of increasing social programs, and also in terms of programs specifically to helping, whether it is with financing, with loans, SMEs and entrepreneurs. So that is really a positive, and that is also what is going to help our economies come out of this situation. Alongside with that, our governments are working strongly on reactivating the infrastructure projects, because infrastructure brings in a lot of employment and also makes your GDP grow faster. So that is also going to be a key of how our governments will handle that. The other side is that we here in South America, we are actually going into our winter time. So I think the next couple of months for us are still going to continue to be difficult times for our countries, for our populations. But the positive thing from this is that we see the reopening and the coming back online of industries in China, in the US, in Europe. And why do I mention that that's so important for us? Is because our largest trading partners are China and the US. So the fact that those economies are opening is a very positive thing for us, specifically since a lot of our economies are what our countries have in common is the natural resources side of how strong that is in our economies. Next slide, please. So what are the current opportunities that we're seeing in these markets? And this just isn't just a list of industry sectors that we decided to put on the slide. It's actually the companies, the projects that we are working with on during the past 3 months, and obviously continue to work on. The companies have been in these sectors, and we continually to see them over and over again in these main sectors, which we will see over the next 2 slides. So we are currently helping various companies that are manufacturers of medical devices, pharmaceuticals, food and beverage. We've done a lot in Chile and in Peru. Food processing and packaging, as you might know, the food industry in these 4 countries is actually very important and at a worldwide level. So support to those industries has also been key. The next 3 industries are obviously also quite related to the pandemic and the growth that it's seen during this pandemic. Cleaning products, disinfectants, e-commerce. Obviously, all of the malls are shut, the shops are shut. So everybody is buying online. So we've been assisting companies that have technology relating to last mile, to logistics, to helping the customer experience in terms of when they're doing that online buying and e-commerce. And I think the IBT team later will discuss a little bit more, has really gone through the roof in our region. With regards to the telecommunications network, well, we are all working from home. Schooling has gone online, so assistance, so the strain on the telecommunication industry is, we are obviously seeing it. So we are helping companies that can alleviate and have the technology to alleviate and make our lives a little bit better through this time. Next slide, please. So one of the areas where really it has been nonstop and there has been a boom of work that we have been doing with is actually, could you go back please, one slide? Perfect, thank you. Is in technology. So we've been doing a lot of work with fintech companies, with artificial intelligence, with telemedicine company. That has continued from day one and is continuing now. With regards to mining and some of the opportunities that you see here, also please keep in mind that we are talking about opportunities in general terms across these 4 countries. And just to give you an example of that, so for example, the mining industry here in Chile is quite advanced technologically. So the opportunities that you're going to see in the mining industry here in Chile, very much in the battery electric vehicles, autonomous mining, and for example, in a country like Peru, where the mining industry is also very strong, but it's not there yet in terms of its technological advancements, you're going to see other types of opportunities. So opportunities in equipment, maybe in efficiency in terms of operation. So please keep in mind that these countries, the opportunities that you see in them can be different. With regards to infrastructure, as I mentioned before, obviously, this is going to be key to helping our economies getting out of these negative growth rates. And here you see projects all across the board in infrastructure, from hospital to roads to schools. But here it's not just the construction of these projects, but it's also the services that go into these projects. So for example, design, engineering services. Those are also areas that we see that there are opportunities in. Agriculture, renewable energy as a whole within the region, within South America, there's a big push in that in all the region, and you see opportunities in solar and wind and biomass projects. Next slide, please. So how have we been managing the past 3 months working from home, helping companies? I mean, the amount of work that our team, my team, has actually seen during the past 3 months has gone through the roof. I certainly know we are all working much harder and for longer hours than we were doing so when we were actually in the office. And we've taken all of that assistance and we're actively helping our clients virtually and literally from around the world, from the US, from Canada, from Asia, from Europe. And we are doing that through virtual meetings. So individual companies that we are assisting, helping them setting up the calls or the Zoom calls, which is very popular nowadays, to have the meetings with their local counterparts through these virtual meetings using these tools that we have at hand. We've done several and are actually working on several virtual trade missions, a lot of them multi-sector trade missions. We're currently doing missions, for example, from Trinidad and Tobago, from the US, from Canada. And we've also continued with our normal reports, research reports, or we're doing sector market studies for companies. We're also doing a lot of distributor and partner searches for our clients. And I would tend to say that probably about 20% more in terms of doing the distributor partner searches versus actually doing the market studies. And a lot of webinars with regards to the opportunities in our region, the situation that we are living, but also webinars specific related to subjects as fintech and startups. Next slide, please. So what are we recommending how you should continue to do business with South American companies? Nothing has really changed post-pandemic. These are the same recommendations that we had post and pre-pandemic. The only thing that is different is that a lot of these things are now being done virtually. So it is critical to assign a local agent representative in our markets to either assist with regulations, to overcome the cultural barriers, the business barriers. It is very different to do business in Chile to how business is done in Argentina. You can't, the same culture, the same regulations are obviously not in play. So you need to localize your local partner. Sorry for the redundance in that. You have to provide support to your local counterparts, whether that's with marketing, with training. You have to be competitive. Please be aware that all of these countries are very actively in trade. They have very many free trade agreements in place with China, with Canada, with the US, with the European Union. So our markets are competitive. So you have to have a value-added proposition. You have to have a pricing strategy. You have to know what the quality of your product, of your service is when coming into this market. You have to, this is the same for all of the 4 countries. You have to follow up proactively. You cannot wait for the companies to contact you. You have to be doing that proactive follow-up. Next slide, please. So after sales service is key. That's also a way that you can differentiate yourself from maybe your competitors that are here. You have to be committed to the market. These markets also work different. Some might be faster in order for you to be able to do business, but at the end of the day, these are markets where you have to be medium to long-term commitment. You have to localize your products. The markets are Spanish-speaking markets. The business culture as well is different, so localizing is key. Even though during the past years there has been a great increase in the number of executives that can speak English in the industries, but your market is Spanish. Do your due diligence when you're coming into the market. Please hire a legal firm. And also our markets are still quite hierarchical, so you have to negotiate with the decision makers. That's going to help in your level of frustration, but it's also going to help your negotiations move faster. Next, please. Or I think that's actually it for me, because I think the next slide exactly was my contact information. So
Veronica, thank you so much. But that was fantastic and really interesting. I'm going to launch a quick poll, just to ask whether people are interested in getting more information at the moment on doing business in South America. And obviously, you know, if Veronica and her team can be of any assistance there, you know, just let us know. Just click on that and thank you very much for being so prompt in those responses. We like that very much, and looks like Veronica and her team will be reaching out to many of you. We appreciate that very much. Right, the last people just collecting those, clicking on those responses, whether you would like more information on doing business in South America. Thank you very much. I'm going to close the poll now, and we're going to move on to the more sort of online part of the presentation. I'm going to talk first a little bit about South America online, and we're a little bit behind schedule, so I'm going to go very quickly through some of these, just try and get us back to give us some time at the end for Q&A, and please do drop your questions into the chat box. I know that there are already some questions that we welcome them. We will make time for them at the end because I'll go through this very quickly. So really just to say the Americas in general, this is for all of the Americas, is a very plugged in place. You know, the penetration rate of the internet is typically around 70 to 80% in most of the countries we're looking at. And what's interesting is that it's still quite, you know, fast growing, particularly at the level of active social media users. Here in this slide for the entire region, we've got plus 6%, but we'll see when we drill down into the individual countries, some of these countries are seeing real strong growth in social media use in particular. There's one point as well. Throughout all of South America, it's actually very useful. Google is the dominant player. You don't have to worry about other search engines and different rules. Google is very much the key player throughout the region. But you know, with over 90, 95, 96, 98% market share in those markets. But what one also has to realize is that each Google is different. So Google Colombia will not give you the same results as Google Peru, because Google Peru will will rate and rank those companies that have the most relevant content for Peru and have the right language, the right hosting, the right content that's relevant for that Peru. So it ranks it according to relevance. One of the ways that it ranks it by relevance is just through the domain names. We've put some examples of domain names. So you in the States, for example, typically you're google.com. In the UK, I'm google.co.uk, Google Mexico.mx, Google Colombia.co. So if you want a good website that's really relevant for Colombia, get google.com, get your website, US company.co for Colombia. That could be one way of localizing your website. I want to give you this example as well in terms of localization of keywords. Keywords are really important. These are the terms that people use to search. And you need to make sure that you've got the right ones for your website and your language. And here's an example of a huge word, car. Think how many searches there are for car. If you're not got the right term, you will, automatically be tying your hands behind your back. I mean, for example, if you've got the Spanish equivalent for car, which is coche, and you're looking to go into Mexico, 27% of people searching for car in Mexico will use coche. That's all the people that you're going to find. But if you use the right word, which is auto in Mexico, you're going to get 73% possible looking for you. So that's an example of sort of keyword localization. I want to give you another example just graphically of what it looks like to different websites, to different search engines to have the same thing and then have a different ranking in terms of priority. My colleague Samantha sits in Florida, So she goes onto google.com, that's the left-hand side of your page here, google.com, and we figured you don't want your pet dogs interfering with your webinar. So you need squeakless dog toys. So she types in squeakless dog toys and she gets chewy.com and freedompoolharness.com and amazon.com. I'm sitting in London at the moment. So I go onto google.co.uk, different search engine, same company, same language, both English. I put in squeakless dog toys and I get different results. I get time for pause. I do get Amazon, but I get amazon.co.uk. It's a different Amazon. Again, Google and the search engine knows which one is relevant. And you're going to find the same thing in a lot of the South American ones too. So just very quickly, when we talk about anything on the web, whether it's websites or your online marketing, everything about it is customer-centric, searcher-centric, and that means it's localized. And localization is not just about language. I gave you one example about language there, about auto and coche, but it has lots to do with technology as well, where you're hosting, what kind of content management system you have, what kind of domain name you've used. I gave you those examples of .mx and .co for Colombia. So there's a lot that goes into localizing your website and localizing your marketing for each specific country. Now, Samantha, maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the specifics in South America.
Yes, I would be happy to. Hello, everyone. I think my webcam is on. So the first thing to keep in mind in Latin America in general, but specifically South America, it is very mobile friendly. With over 100% of mobile connectivity in the continent, there's no surprise that about 77% of people in South America use their smartphones to access the internet. Ever since the introduction of smartphones in about 2007, there's been a huge uptick in usage. And this is especially because of the limited broadband infrastructure, which means that a smartphone is a real economic and business tool. This is similar to what we see in a lot of developing countries as well. And the turn to mobile devices has consequences for you guys, for the US businesses, in doing business with people with South America, because the most obvious example is your website has to be mobile friendly. And so multi-platform and mobile enabled. But there's other consequences as well. So for e-commerce, for payment options, and also for social media, which is a trend that we'll take a look at now. Social media is the second trend, and basically South America is very social. I know this graph is in Spanish, so bear with me, but according to the survey, the #1 reason why people access the internet is to check out social media sites. This is very different. This is very different from US in terms of a business perspective, because you would say the majority of people in the US is they go on the internet to check emails or research some or things. So you need to keep this in mind when you are thinking of a business strategy and going into South America. And the last trend to keep in mind is the rise of e-commerce. E-commerce is very fast growing, it's mobile, and it has room for even more growth. As you can see on the graph on the left, even before COVID-19 and this kind of surge of internet use and e-commerce purchases, it was projected to grow by about $20 million in sales by 2022. It's also important to keep in mind that the main generalist in the market is not Amazon. It's actually a company called Mercado Libre, and it is the largest online e-commerce system in Latin America with a presence in about 18 different countries. And in terms of market share, Brazil is the largest source of revenue at 65%, followed by Argentina and Mexico. And these three countries make up 95% of Mercado Libre's revenue streams. So especially if you're looking at doing business in those three markets, Mercado Libre is very important. The company offers a variety of different services, kind of like how Amazon does, where they have the marketplace, which is Mercado Libre, and then they have logistics service, a credit solution, an online store, a fintech platform, and an advertising service. So definitely a platform to keep in mind if looking at e-commerce in South America. So now let's take a brief look at individual countries and their online environments. This is very, very top level. So if you want to take a deeper dive, Hootsuite is a wonderful resource, and we have a few infographics on our website as well. So if you want to take a look at those, they're free. So Argentina is the third largest economy in South America, and they are extremely active online. About 78% of the population are internet users, and there are actually more mobile connections than people in Argentina. And they're also very, very social. We'll see a bit later in the presentation that they're number 5 in the world in terms of the amount of social media users compared to their population. And they spend about 3 hours a day on social media platforms. So very, very active. Next is Brazil. So Brazil is the 9th largest economy in the world in terms of GDP and the largest in South America. Brazil is also the world's 5th largest country in terms of both population and geographical area, making about 47% of the entire South American continent. So it's pretty large. Brazilians are also very connected, with 71% of the people online, and actually 90% of people go online every day. Chile. Chile has seen a large increase of social media in the past year, with 1 million more people active on 1 million more people are active online and on social media. Chile is also exemplary of how mobile South America is, with 99% of social media users accessing the platforms via mobile. So you have to make sure, in terms of US selling into Chile, that your graphics and your videos are all very mobile friendly on these social media sites. Next is Colombia. What's important to keep in mind about Colombia is that virtually all Colombians are active on social media, which is kind of crazy. But it does make sense that ads are pretty effective in Colombia on social media sites, with it being the #1 source for Colombians to find new brands, compared to things that we normally think of, like TV, word of mouth, and ads on websites. Then the last country that we're just going to touch upon is Peru. So Peru has seen an impressive increase in the value of e-commerce spend, with about 41% of an increase in 2019. Also, like Colombia, all internet users are active on social media, and Snapchat has actually grown the most compared to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and even Instagram at 21%, which is very different from the majority of countries. Usually Instagram sees the most growth. So this is particularly unique to Peru. And that actually concludes the section about the online environment in each individual countries. So now we're going to take a look at online business development tools for South America. So we tend to divide the online tools into 2 interrelated sets, your website and your online marketing. There was a time where it was okay to just have your basic domestic US website, back in the good old days, where it was good enough to just, have a website. Your webmaster would come in, update it every now and then, optimize some keywords, and then be done for the next 6 months. But now it's really important to keep the SEO going on your website, and then also support it with online marketing. And this includes search engine marketing and social media marketing. So in order to make the most of your website, your SEO, and your social media marketing, the first thing that you have to do is identify your buyer persona. So for South America, and actually the United States as well, it's really important to define and really understand your buyer persona. So for those of you who don't know what a buyer persona is, as HubSpot defines it, a buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data on existing customers. So defining a buyer persona is very important, like I mentioned, because it allows you to make sure that you're reaching the right person at the right time with the right message, saving yourself a ton of time and resources, especially when you get into, the pay-per-click and the social media posts and all that stuff. So before we get into international buyer personas, here's a really great example of a domestic one from Zipcar. So their mission statement even includes who their main buyer persona would be. Somebody who's urban, educated, tech savvy, and environmentally conscious. And you can totally tell by the example on the right. These are two people who seem pretty young. They're holding a plant, makes them seem environmentally friendly. If you look at the backgrounds, they are in an urban environment. They're not on a farm. So completely speaking to who their main buyer persona is. And the good news is that for companies, this shouldn't be very hard to do, defining your buyer persona. You should already know your main attributes based on who your current customers are, and then you can get together with your sales and marketing team and really flesh out the details from analytics on your website and your current customers. So now diving into international buyer persona. Especially in the times that we're in today, international buyer personas can differ from your domestic persona. And on this slide, there's a few questions you should ask yourself, like, are there multiple buyer personas for my export markets? How do they typically find me? What do they care about? How can I sell to them? In this example, we use L'Oreal because they're frequently cited for how absolutely spot on they are with their international marketing. So if you look at this first picture and the text, it's L'Oreal assuring that to their US stylists that they're committed to support them while we are socially distancing ourselves. And L'Oreal knows that their buyer persona are generally US stylists that are most likely either small business owners or work for a small business. So right now, the majority of stylists are closed. And L'Oreal is showing their support, which is reflective of what L'Oreal understands is the US's main concern in terms of stylists, so support for these SMEs. However, if we take a look at L'Oreal Australia, the message is completely different. There is no mention of COVID-19, of coronavirus, of social distancing, nothing, but instead a focus on the climate. And this is probably due to the horrible fires that Australia suffered just a few months ago in the beginning of the year. And that's what matters to them right now. So their marketing is reflective of that. And then in the last example, and the one most relevant to this webinar, is L'Oreal Brazil. And they're demonstrating to their Brazilian customers that they're doing their part to help the people of Brazil by producing hand sanitizer, which is something that they don't typically produce. So as you can see by this example, each buyer persona is clearly different, and L'Oreal's messaging is respectful of that. All right, I think it's time for Susanna.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Samantha. Again, we're sort of whizzing through a lot of this, but I do remind you, and just to reply to those people, yes, you will get a recording of this in your inbox. Just really quickly, just reiterating this point about how important social media is in South America. You've got some of the growth of that, plus 8% versus plus 3% on average of North America. And then there are other sort of more fuzzy image on the right. Sorry for that one. The importance of WhatsApp. WhatsApp is just absolutely key across South America. But I think what's clear in the current bar in this graph that I'm showing you now, I want to show you this as well. The USA penetration of social media is at 83%. Colombia is 86%. Mexico 90%. Argentina 96%. So if you think you in your country, or if you're in Canada, 77%, or in Spain 71%. We tend to think in these countries that we're all on social media all the time. In South America, it is absolutely a key part of your internet experience on a daily basis. It's very often how you search for products. You don't always go to Google. You might go to WhatsApp and use WhatsApp as a search engine. So this is also the dominant feature about Facebook and the importance of Facebook in South America. I wanted to point out as well, so here you have the number of users in millions in Latin America, with an estimate up to 2019 at the end. But I also wanted to point out the cost per click is really interesting as well. The cost per click is really low. I mean, these are just some examples, but you know, in all the things that we're active in, we find that, you know, typically Colombia, Chile, Peru, Mexico are all a fraction of the cost of what you would pay for the same AdWords in, for example, the US or Germany or something like that. One of the things that we're being asked for a lot at the moment is how to help distributors, and in how to help my export distributors. You know, how do I help my distributor out there in Colombia or wherever? And I want to share an example of this client who has a big footprint across Latin America, and they basically now are ramping up their online tools to drive business to their distributors. So generating leads from their websites, their localized websites, and their localized online marketing in Latin America to drive the leads to their distributors. And this, you know, goes straight onto their distributors wherever they are. And you can sort of click on, you know, the person can then click on and find the place where to buy across Latin America. Very quickly also, I wanted to highlight some of the differences in reactivity and engagement and conversion for these markets. And here's an example. This is the same post, same time, same product, both on Facebook, obviously. And the difference between something posted in Germany and posted in Colombia. In Germany, we were very, very, very happy about the number of people we reached. We reached over 9,000 people without one ad. We were like, yay, we've done really well. Colombia, you know, a fraction of the size, 371,000 people were reached. And not just reached, they loved it. They went to haha, wows, all kinds of things. Enormous numbers of shares and reactions. What's also interesting, though, is to dig slightly below this and see what happens between engagements and conversions. And again, here you have this same thing over 12 months. You'll see that the top one, Colombia, the blue and red are those, you know, how many people you've reached. How many people went on through the distributor to actually buy things is represented in the green and yellow bar charts. And you'll see that it's not as different as it is in the blue and red. So in Colombia, for example, we know that we need to have about 3 to 4 times the level of engagement to conversions that we have in Germany. And that's the difference in the markets, the difference in the way it's structured, and the difference in that reactivity that you get throughout the Latin American and South American markets. Moving on, we wanted to also say, you know, a helping hand, takeaways, and then please a little bit of time for questions. And I realize we're running the clock down. I guess the first thing we wanted to mention was just be prepared for the rebound. We don't know when the rebound's coming. We don't know the shape of it, double dip, whatever it is, but we do know that it's coming. And that the hardest thing is to regain market share once you lose it. So our absolutely the most important message for us, and you heard it also from Veronica, was to prepare for that rebound. Don't disappear from the radar. It's really hard to scrape it back afterwards. And we were very struck also with this example, this U.S. company who basically said, you know, we make, you know, we're advanced manufacturing. We normally have a face-to-face, on the floor, hand-to-hand business, but right now we can't. But we are still trading. We are still going ahead. Let's take advantage of this moment. Let's take advantage to really get out there and get these websites up and running and online marketing up and running to regain market share in these new export markets. And that's, I think, is one of the keys that we're having, seeing from that, in a way to prepare for the rebound. Samantha, do you just want to talk to us about, sort of explain how some of the options that we've settled on?
Yeah, I would be happy to. So if you're looking to have that localized online presence in South America or other countries around the world, this is our first option, which is option A, a 2-market expansion with a limited scope, so 12 web pages and 2,000 words each website. So by the end of option A, you'll have 2 websites completely localized for your top 2 target markets. So in this example, we have German for Germany and one in French for France, but it can be Spanish for Colombia and then Portuguese for Brazil. And these websites will be based off of your US website, but we will go through a whole localization process that we talked about in the beginning of this webinar. So by having these websites, they will help to be understood and be easier to do business with in your top 2 target markets. In terms of budget, it's $12,000, but depending on where you're located, there are grants available depending on your state and also your eligibility. And there's information on that link there that you see, partners. So option B is, option B, it's okay. It's a multi-market expansion, so it's anything above and beyond the scope of work of option A. So say you want e-commerce on your website, or you want a complete redesign for your international sites, or the scope is just too small, you want more words, more pages, more functionality, then that would be option B. And the budget would definitely be dependent on the scope of work, but there are grants available. STEP, or if you're in Florida, Enterprise Florida has some grants available. But if you want more information, you can go on your partner's webpage to learn more. And then option C is international online marketing. So as we saw in this whole presentation, social media is a huge component of doing business in South America. So we do offer international online marketing. So search engine marketing, social media marketing, and reporting and analytics on a monthly basis. And the budget for this service is $1,500 per market per month. And we do have a recommended ad spend. And the same for website localization goes for international online marketing, that there are some grants dependent on eligibility and also where you are located. So dependent on states.
Samantha, thank you so much. And sorry for rushing you through that. I just want to launch our last poll, really, which is just if you would like more information on these localized websites, are you interested in learning more about international online marketing? Please let us know. You know, if you'd like us to contact you in any way about Latin American websites, the grants that are available for many of you, how much and what availability of those grants are. We can also answer some of those questions. And I'm delighted to see that many of you do. I'm very grateful for that. Thank you very much indeed. The last of you are just finally putting in your responses as well, and we will indeed be getting in touch with those who have said that they are interested in more information on localized websites. I think I'm gonna close that poll now. I think you've mainly all finished. Yes, I'll close that poll now. We wanted to round up just the last slides, really just to talk through the sort of takeaways, summaries from our point of view. The first being really websites and online marketing are always customer centric. And that means they have to be very strongly localized. Just as Veronica was saying in terms of the different markets, same thing online. South America online is a very specific market. It's very mobile friendly. It's relatively cheap. It's very reactive and very sociable. Localized websites and online marketing, for us, they are the most effective way of preparing for the rebound. In order to generate more leads, establish your brand, and grow your brand awareness. As a final message from all of us, these are difficult times, tough times. Look after yourselves, look after your communities, look after your loved ones. I hope we've left 1 minute for some questions. Joelle, would you like to, are there questions come in?
Absolutely, thank you, Susanna. We've had a lot of questions coming in, so I've been trying my best to try and group them as much as possible to try and answer as many of them as possible. There's been a lot of questions around domain name? Should we focus on one country? Should we focus on the region? So maybe one for yourself, Samantha. Which is the best domain name to have for South America? People are asking, can they use the .lat, or is it better to use a specific country domain name?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're looking to focus on growing one specific market, so say you're looking to focus specifically in Colombia, then we always suggest being more specific. That way you can do the keyword research specifically for Colombia, have a Colombian domain name, host it in Colombia, and all the localization practices for Colombia. However, if you're looking at more of Latin America in general, you can put it on a .lat. It's just not going to be specific or completely localized for a specific country. So you might have some disadvantages there, but it's definitely a start.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Samantha. A lot of questions for yourself too, Veronica. So a few people were asking, if they sign a distributor agreement, does US law count, or is it in the law of the country?
Yeah, so typically with regards to the contract, and that also depends which country you're talking about. So for example, Chile is a signatory to the New York program. So the laws that apply in Chile will also apply, for example, to the United States. So I think the best thing to do is just to double check with the international programs that the countries are signatories to, but mainly the contracts that we see, the jurisdiction that comes into play is the local jurisdiction. Obviously, with chambers of commerce put in there in case there are disputes.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Veronica. Susanna, do we have time for a couple more? I've got a few more lined up here.
Two more, that's it, two more.
Got one for you then, Susanna. In terms of online marketing, is it possible to use the same content for several South American countries, or would you recommend doing them all separately?
It's in a way it's similar to Samantha's response on the domain name. If you've got one market which is going to represent the most of your business, then make it as specific as possible. Your buyer needs to have the trust in you that you need for the buyer's journey. Your buyer needs to be able to find themselves in your marketing. And so if you've got one market which is going to represent the bulk of it, factor it for that market. But not all of us have the resources to make, lots of different content for all these different markets. And certainly South America as a whole represents a region that has some similarities and a lot of shared things. So you can also do a lot of repurposing as well. So it's sort of it's a lot handier, for example, doing content in all of South America than it is, for example, across Europe with all of its different languages. So if you've got a specific market where you really want to focus, that's one strategy. Otherwise, you can actually do quite a lot of overlap. That helps. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Susanna. I think we've got time for a squeeze one more in if we still got a few people on. Veronica, I think something that will affect everyone doing business in Latin America. Has the region become less politically stable since COVID-19?
I think what COVID has brought to the forefront, and this is actually something that we're seeing all over the world, is maybe the strengths and the deficiencies that our own markets have internally, for example, in the health sector. But in terms of politically, there's obviously discussions going between the parties of how the governments have reacted to the pandemic, and they can be pro and they can be against the regulations that have been taken that have been taken by the governments. But I think that's normal in this situation, to be honest with you. But in terms of of having worsened the political situations. I don't see that in the countries that we work in.
That's great. Thank you much for your insight on that, Veronica.
We have slightly overstepped our hour. We wanted to thank all of you for attending and for joining us today to talk about these, opportunities, business opportunities in these difficult times. From IBT Online, we wanted to really thank Veronica Medina and Business Hub and the teams at Business Hub for all of their hard work and great support. You will all be getting a recording of this in your inbox within the next 2 days. Please also check your spam box if you don't get it, because sometimes it goes to spam. And we will answer your specific questions separately by email. I realize we've cut short on time. If we haven't answered your questions, we will answer them by email directly. It's just rests to me to thank my colleague Samantha for presenting so much on South America. It's fantastic. Thank you very much. And also for Joelle to help me organize and get to all of your questions. We want to wish you all the best. Stay well, stay healthy, stay active, and happy trading. Get in touch if we can be of any help, and also for Business Hub if they can be of any help. See you all on the next webinar. Thank you all very much, and bye-bye.